Hey there, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Delivered Podcast. I'm your host, Athena Estelle, and I have a super exciting guest that has joined us today. She has been so gracious and kind to join us. I'm joined by the Olympic gold medalist in 1998 for ice skating, Tara Lipinski. Welcome, Tara.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yes, me too. So, just to give the listeners a little quick background, obviously the Delivered podcast focuses on the postpartum journey and the steps that a mother takes to get there. But I've always said to my husband, Chris, that we cannot have a postpartum journey without a prepartum journey. And we all become pregnant or have our babies different ways. And I think something that is very important to me in this podcast is that we're going to showcase those different ways that women bring their babies into the world. So Miss Tara Lipinski is here to tell us about her surrogacy journey, which I'm so excited to dive into.
Yeah.
Tara, tell us a little bit about how you got to the choice of doing a surrogate after I know you had several trials with IVF.
So we eventually got there. It took about 5 years and our journey was long and it was unexplained infertility. And we did a lot of testing with no answers. Everything would just pop up. Everything looks perfect. And we had started IVF not because we were trying naturally. We started just because I knew I was getting older. And with my work, I commentate or I broadcast the Olympics, the summer and winter. So that's every 2 years. And it's my main gig. So we usually have to go for about a month to the Olympics. So a lot of people in the industry need to plan around that. And when you're a bit older, we thought going the IVF route might be the smartest decision. And then just to kind of see where everything was at and have more of a plan in place as we started thinking about building a family. And we started down IVF and we started hitting bumps in the road, discovering I had endometriosis, which then led to some failed retrievals and 2 major surgeries. And then we naturally got pregnant the very first time we tried, which ended in a miscarriage. That when they tested the embryo, it was genetically normal, which should now looking back, all the signs were pointing to what actually happened in our story. But at the time we thought, well, maybe it was my endo. So we did a surgery to try to clean out any inflammation, just because as we know, many miscarriages, almost 80 to 90% of them usually are from chromosomal abnormalities. So when you have a normal embryo, there leaves 20% of, is it your uterus, is it endometriosis, what else could it be? So that was pretty much what we struggled to try to figure out, why I could get pregnant but couldn't keep the pregnancies. And so I went through 4 miscarriages, 4 DNCs, 6 failed transfers. All embryos were genetically normal, and it was really just at a point where we couldn't figure out what was wrong or what our answer was. And after my 4th miscarriage, I had 2 in the span of about 3 months, and I was just emotionally and physically exhausted. And this one really just took me out physically. It was a long, extended one that went on for months, and I was physically feeling ill. I think for the first time, a lot of times my body would just bounce back, but I had bleeding that lasted and I was so exhausted. And then we finally found out I was anemic, and that took a while to find out. But it was at the point where I realized, wow, now I'm feeling affected, that you go into infertility or IVF and you start hitting roadblocks, and all you care about is a potential baby. So you will do anything. You'll take any medicine. You'll do anything they said. If they told me to stand on my head for 10 hours a day, that's what I would have done. So it was really the first time that I started to think about myself again of, I don't want to be in a place where I start to physically be affected by what I'm putting my body through. And that coincided with one last test we tried, which usually happens sort of at the end of the road when all other testing's normal. We had other things in our journey that, just Murphy's Law, I guess. We missed a septum that I had to have a surgery for that. So there were many times we had so much hope that we had found an answer. But at the end of the day, it was ultimately when we did immune testing where they test Todd's genetics and my genetics, and not just the normal genetics that a lot of people will get in the initial parts of pregnancy, but very specific immune genetic testing. So not to get in the weeds, but our HLA and our genetics of the actual embryo that I would get pregnant with, my body recognized my DNA, but when it saw Todd's, it reacted as if it was a foreign body. So what usually happens with that is it will eventually let go of the pregnancy because my body's not naturally letting the mechanics of how an embryo develops naturally work in a good way. So we got that answer about the same time that I was going through my fourth miscarriage. And when we talked to Dr. Vidali, who was our immune doctor, he gave us some options of doing some immune therapy drugs, IVIG, a lot of different treatments that could potentially help combat this issue. But I think we just were at a point 5 years in where we realized I'm physically exhausted at this point, and there's all of these protocols and drugs that I could try, but how really will that affect me? So we really came to this decision together that a surrogate would be our best option. And we really didn't want to wait any longer to build our family. So we took one of our embryos and we gave it to a beautiful surrogate to carry for us. And that was our Georgie.
That is so beautiful. I think that it's so powerful, just that a mother's love. I mean, you literally would do anything to have that baby in your arms, right? So I think the fact that it's awful that it took you that long process. And,
Right.
I don't wish that on anyone, but I think it's amazing that you found a surrogate that you
Yeah.
obviously like fell in love with and trust. And now she's part of your life forever.
I know. She's a family, not even a friend. She's family forever. I talked to her today. We talk almost all the time. And I was just very lucky to have met this surrogate in the time that we did. And it was a process that, can be really difficult sometimes just to come to terms with, of losing all of that control, of not carrying the pregnancy yourself, of all these extra worries that you have. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, but Michaela was just the right person for me, and the person that was able to ease some of my anxieties and to really make me feel comfortable. And in a way, I finally felt a little bit of relief knowing there was, a pro that could actually help us build our family, because clearly I didn't have a lot of confidence left in my own body.
Yeah, that's powerful. So, did you use an agency to find her, or did you have your physician helping, or how did
So we
that come
went through
about?
an agency. We worked with Happy Beginnings. I think they're out of Chicago, but my surrogate was in Idaho. And when we matched, we had our first phone call. And I think we both kind of knew this seems like a match. She really wanted to have a lot of communication, which was really important to me. And throughout the journey, we talked almost, probably every day. And all of the things that I might have worried about, she was always one step ahead, always asking me, "Hey, I'm going to do this. Do you think, I'm getting sunscreen? Is there a certain sunscreen you want me to get?" So there was
Aw.
always, yeah, she was always just so aware of all of the things that I might have worried about and lost control of, because this wasn't a pregnancy that I was carrying, and she was able to really give me some security that I hadn't had for years.
And I bet that brought you next level of peace, right?
Right. It gave me peace, and it also bonded me to Michaela, just because we were going through this together. It felt very much like we were teammates. I'm an athlete, and it
Mm.
was that feeling, that loyalty, and that intense feeling you have if you're on a team and you're working towards the same goal, and you get proud of all the milestones you reach together. And you take these moments and you are able to celebrate them together. I just remember when I got the first heartbeat, I could, I was so nervous. I could tell she was so nervous. And then when I was so excited, I could see her, like a tear dropping down her face. It was just this really beautiful relationships that came out of this.
That's so cool. I absolutely love that. And I think looking back, I think that the day that you decide to tell Georgie, like that is such a powerful story. It's
Yes.
just so beautiful. Yeah,
I know. Auntie Michaela will always, hopefully, she doesn't live close to us, but we FaceTime her and I send her all the pictures. And, I think she's just, she really was heaven sent. So we were so lucky to have found her.
that's awesome. So let's go back during the time where you're still going through the IVF, you're working through that process. When did you start seeking therapy and how did that go for you at that point?
I think after the first miscarriage, just because I was so surprised by the feelings I was experiencing. Obviously, you think about miscarriage and you think that's awful and that's going to be terrible to go through if I ever have to. But I think I probably, for no right reason, just thought, oh, like I would get through it or it would be okay. And I was just very surprised at, because it was an early miscarriage and I thought, you know, I can get through that. And I underestimated the emotions and the pain that came with that miscarriage and just things that
Mm,
people, unless they go through it, really don't understand of the limbo and the time frame and how long these things are dragged out and the scans and obviously then making decisions of how are you going to finish the cycle. Are you going to have a DNC? Are you going to lose the pregnancy at home? And it's a lot to wrap your mind around, and then to be afraid of the future and all of the fears of why did this happen and what is wrong and when will I be pregnant again, and talking to friends and having these conversations that you just don't think about these things, but they really affected me. So I started therapy around that time.
that's so awesome. And was there a time when you were going through therapy? I think about some of my postpartum therapists and I'm like, man, I wish that I would have like, clung to that because, looking back, obviously hindsight, but was there something that your therapist was kind of working with you, either like a theme or maybe a quote or something you could just repeat to yourself in those moments of, true raw struggle?
Well, I think for me, specifically with the loss, I didn't know many people that had gone through exactly. Of course, I've had a friend who went through a miscarriage, but I was eventually, as our story continued, I was going through many different types of failures and many different losses and 24 surgeries. So it was getting to a point where I was really alone in this journey of I didn't know anyone who had gone through exactly what I was going through. And I think going to therapy just made me feel she was able to validate my feelings
Mm,
where, I don't know, there were times I thought, am I being too emotional? Why am I having this feeling? Why am I feeling this emotion? And why is it affecting my entire life so in every possible way? And I think she was able to kind of explain why and make me feel comfortable with the feelings and know that they were normal, know that many women experience the same thing. So I didn't feel so alone or scared that I was having these big emotions. And I think for me, she was just able to help me process next steps and to figure out what was probably the best way for me to grieve too, because I didn't
mhm.
know what I should do. Should I just push it under the rug? Should I jump back out there? What should I do? And she was able to really kind of give me guidelines for that.
Oh, that's great. So obviously, you're very resilient in athletics, in life, as a wife, now as a mom. Did you feel going into those moments prior to the IVF? Did you feel like a sense of fear just knowing what you'd already gone through and just
Mhm.
thinking, "Oh gosh, I hope it doesn't happen again"? Was that like a constant theme for you?
It was a constant theme, and it got to the point where it was just deja vu over and over again, which was probably the most traumatizing thing of all of the journey was deja
Mm.
vu, that it even my pregnancy losses, they were all the same. It wasn't like I had a chemical pregnancy one time and I had this another. They all repeated in the same way, which, when it starts to happen the second time and then it happens the third time and you build up hope and it happens the fourth time, it's almost crazy making. It really makes you feel like you're losing your mind that this possibly can't be happening again.
Now, I'm wondering, we talked a little bit pre-recording about the Receptiva testing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's good for the listeners to know because I know most people have no idea it's even out there.
There's so many fertility tests out there. There's testing for almost, every part of a retrieval to a transfer to prepping for a transfer phase. And I really wanted to, especially with all the obstacles we were hitting, I wanted to test as much as possible to try to figure out what was wrong. And I also have endometriosis, which this test, if you do have endometriosis, could show up positive, which could be a reason why you might lose a pregnancy if you have inflammation in your uterine lining or on your uterine lining. So we decided to do that test because we knew I had pretty bad endometriosis. And we thought at first, well, maybe this is why I'm not able to keep the pregnancies because of the inflammation on my uterine lining. However, we did the test and it came back negative. I'm sure no test is 100%. And these are all amazing tests that are really giving so many data points and information to women. So for us, it was a good enough result of it kind of goes in numbers. My numbers were 0 inflammation. So for us, it was sort of a great test to know what steps to take next. Because if I did have inflammation, you can take a certain drug for 1 to 3 months that can help that. So that would have delayed our process even further if I had taken that drug. So it was really great that we were able to do that. I even had them on the podcast, just obviously spreading information for people going through IVF that may be hitting some unexplained failures.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think just the fact that tests like this are coming out and that it's the awareness. If we don't talk about these super hard taboo subjects that no one wants to talk about, how do we help the next generation? How do we help ourselves heal,
Right. Exactly.
So, as far as your endometriosis, what were the signs and symptoms that kind of tipped you off? Okay, this is not a normal feeling that I'm having throughout this process.
Yeah, for me, it took almost 10 years to diagnose, which is actually on par with how long it takes for a woman to get diagnosed with endometriosis, which is just crazy to think about, just women's reproductive health in general and how things can go missed for so long and people can be in so much pain. For myself, I didn't have the traditional symptoms of endometriosis, of painful cycles, of heavy bleeding, of cramping. I didn't have any of that. If anything, it was quite easy. But I did have, my husband and I just joke about it because there should be a name for it, but I had no idea what to call it. But I call them butt zingers because I thought it was possibly like my tailbone from hitting the ice so many times that maybe that's why I would have this like electrocuting pain that would come over me. But then obviously reading more and talking to my fertility doctor and explaining these symptoms and then realizing, oh my goodness, they come, during ovulation, they come during my cycle. So there's a connection here because endo can be anywhere in your pelvic cavity. So just because I didn't personally have it on my ovaries or my fallopian tubes, but I had it everywhere else. And that's why my symptoms were different than the straightforward symptoms that a lot of people with endometriosis have.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, is that something that you see in your family history as well? Or is this something that you've only seen in yourself?
So my mom says that she had those pains. It definitely nowhere near the level that I did. But my mom also had me when she was younger. So I don't know. She did not struggle with fertility, but I don't know, if she had waited, if that would have gotten worse or whatnot. But there are obviously genetic links to it, but I don't know in my family anyone else that struggles with it.
That makes sense. Now, in your podcast with your husband, Todd, on expecting, which I'm obsessed with, my husband and I love listening to it.
Thank you.
You guys are just so fun. I can see you guys like sitting in your living room on 2 different chairs, like just going back and
Yeah,
forth.
that's us.
Oh my God, it's so great. So in the show, you kind of talk a little bit in a few of the episodes how it's good for you to talk about. It's been healing, it's been helpful. But at the same time, is it almost like reliving it when you're doing those episodes? Does it bring up that, I used to call it like a punch in my gut. Like when I talk about the postpartum, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to vomit,
Right. Yeah,
So
it definitely for us, I had done a lot of therapy and I thought that, wow, I have unpacked a lot here. But I think going into detail like we did and in such explicit detail and really drumming up all of these past issues, I think we probably both felt triggered a little bit, by these emotions. And it was talking about them, like you said, it just takes you back to this time in your life that just felt just so unstable, where you just would look around and feel like, what is my life? I'm in this fog. This is just not a happy existence. And we have so much to be grateful for, which we always talk about. But at the same time, that those 5 years really turned our life upside down.
Yeah. And I feel like you probably look back now and you're like, wow, I cannot believe that that was really my life.
Yeah, I look back now and I'm just tired thinking about it because I remember how tired I was in the moment and how I just had to keep going. And it just was month to month rolled by. And it was just getting to that next step. And somehow 5 years passed. But looking back, I mean, I remember just the emotional and physical exhaustion of it all and just wondering, when is this going to be over? When is this nightmare going to end?
Yeah. That's awful. I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
Oh, you had to go through your journey. I feel like that's the silver lining of going through all these things is you meet people in the community that you connect with and you have these shared experiences with and you have so much compassion and empathy and you just want to help in any way you can.
Yeah, definitely. So for you, we talked about the therapy and how helpful that was. Was that really the main thing that helped you overcome that self shame and kind of the blame game? Was that really what helped you the most?
I think that helped. I think that I also went to a fertility acupuncturist, which when I look back on it, of course, I loved getting my 45 minutes nap in with needles. And I'm sure there's incredible benefits to relieving anxiety and having those 45 minutes to decompress. But for me, the woman that I worked with became a friend and is a friend. And she was herself in the infertility world, had gone through infertility, eventually had
Oh.
2 children, but obviously that's why she specializes in fertility acupuncture. And it was really nice and a safe place for me to go to when I was going through either miscarriage or retrievals or transfers because she knew the space so well. And when you're with your doctor, you only get a few minutes. And then you have all of these questions and all of these worries. And it would just be a little hamster wheel in my head. So not only the therapy, but being able to go to my fertility acupuncturist as therapy as well to sort of unleash all of these I think was helpful because if I kept them inside, I would have exploded.
Oh, for sure. I think any of us would have. So then you find Michaela, you guys are on a great journey, things are going well, you hear the heartbeat, everything's great. Did you feel throughout that journey and getting closer and closer to meeting the baby, did you start to feel peace or was it not true
Oh.
peace until you saw the baby?
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever feel peace around pregnancy. I'm terrified of becoming pregnant myself because we get pregnant naturally and we've have been pregnant, 4 times, but obviously the outcome is never good, so I have a lot of fear around that now and which is crazy because I would have done anything to have a chance at being pregnant thinking back each time, each cycle, but now I'm definitely so afraid of it. And even through the surrogacy, I loved my relationship with my surrogate. It was the best part of the journey. But I think that who knows if we do another journey, what that would look like. But I still feel so much fear around testing and scans and pregnancy. And when I look back at Georgie, I never felt comfortable. And I just was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Even when she was being born, I felt a little relief when we hooked up Michaela to the heart monitor and we could hear Georgie's heartbeat. But even then, I wasn't comfortable. During the birth, Todd was videoing and the birth, and I was literally sobbing because I think by the time she came out and she was screaming, it was the first time that I actually took a deep breath in 5 years. And up until that moment, even at the hospital, there wasn't this excitement. There was still so much worry of could something go wrong? Is something wrong? What's going to happen? And I was just waiting to hear the baby cry and for the doctor to say, everything's okay. And the moment the doctor was like, she's great, was the first moment that I really just like was able to hopefully step out of that hellish nightmare that I had lived for so long and try to realize that this is actually happening for us.
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, I can't imagine finding peace before that. I
Yeah.
mean,
It
I
always
don't
like
know
blows
if
my mind when I think of people like I'll see, people in the hospital and they're so excited and they're so, they're and I'm like, oh no, I couldn't talk about anything. I just, I wanted to talk about is our heart rate okay? And
Yeah.
that was all I was
Oh, yeah.
was
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about.
It's crazy. Now, after she had Georgie, did you have family in town to meet the baby at the hospital, or was it just the 3 of you, nice and quiet?
So it was the 3 of us. And then We left the next day. So
Oh,
yeah, we had her late that night. And then the next morning, we did all the testing and we got a little help from the nurses of what to do since we had no idea what we were doing. And then we were able to take her home, and my parents were there waiting. And then Todd's parents flew in for a month and saw baby Georgie for a full month, which was amazing. So, yeah, it was a surreal experience for sure.
that's awesome. And she's 2 months now, right?
Yes.
Oh, it goes by so fast. Just
I know.
savor it. Oh my
I
gosh.
know.
It's too much.
She's a little nugget. She's adorable.
Oh, that's so exciting. All right. So I'll leave the listeners with this. So, Tara, in your mind, what is one word that you would wrap up your whole journey with? If you had to pick one, what is like the theme, I guess, for you of just your whole journey?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the only thing that comes to my mind is hell. Like that was my journey through this infertility story of Todd and I don't think there's really any way around it. It was so much loss. We have so many things to be grateful for in the process that we were able, we really wanted to try to make our own embryos, and we got to the point where we were really lucky to be able to have that. But aside from that win, our every day was just filled with bad news for so long. And in this specific part of our lives, we're again, I always want to preface how lucky we are in our life to be healthy and to have each other and to have all the things that you want in life. But when it came to infertility and building a family, we were very unlucky. And I
Hmm.
think just looking back on the journey, that's what it feels like. I don't know if that will ever change. I'm aware that I'm grateful for, any silver lining that you can try to find of how, I think it helped me evolve as a person and find patience and find acceptance and, tap into parts of who I am that I probably left covered just because I'm a type A love control type of person, and I was able to, or I had to, give those parts up and find another way to live life in a way that could get me from day to day. So I think there are so many positive things, and I think the journey for Todd and I has brought us closer, has helped us deal with things that now as parents, maybe we got a little pre-prep for and figured some of that out in our infertility time, and now we really know what each other needs in tough moments. So, of course, there's always positives to evolving as a person or going through hard times, but yes, looking back on that journey, it was pretty hellish.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but I think it's so great that you're using your platform for the betterment of everybody. I mean, society, moms, dads, literally everybody. I think it's fantastic. And I think one day Georgie will be a mom and she'll be able to look back and be like, Mom, you are such a badass. That's so crazy.
I know.
So, yeah, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being willing to come on and share your story. And I know that every listener is just going to be so appreciative. So, thank you so, so much.
Of course. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we could be here, and thank you for all you're doing for everyone in your community that is, like you said, whether it's prepartum or postpartum, the journey to building a family is not so easy sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tara. You are wonderful. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. You too.
All right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Hope that you'll join us next week.